العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى مؤمنين مؤمنات, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so I want to split up today's discussion into two parts. I said I was going to go through the section on tarbiyah on the weekends when there's more adults present, because going through Islamic parenting for people who are not parents yet doesn't really make sense, right? But if I keep doing that every night, then I probably will never end up going through that. So for the second half, we'll mention some points about tarbiyah, inshallah. For the first half, we're going to continue what we've been talking about. So we've been talking about first the idea of Muslim identity. That a lot of us, we don't have a strong identity because we don't really have yaqeen, itminan, and a certainty in our belief system. And we said the most essential belief that we need to understand is tawheed. Because we know that the reason we have issues in the furu' ad-din, why we have questions about salah and som and hajj and zakat and khums and all of this, we have all these little questions and all these issues we see in Islam and in life, is normally because our tawheed, we misunderstand. We don't understand God really. So we wanted to first start, we did two things first. We talked about the meaning of tawheed, and we said tawheed is an action. It's something you perform, it's not just some belief. You constantly have to take everything back to Allah and see everything as a reflection and a manifestation of God's names. The second thing which we started last night is about proving that Allah actually exists. Because this is obviously a major concern in this society right now, right? People, nowadays we see more and more atheists growing. So we started the discussion by saying that, look, just like you have somebody crossing a bridge, people of different weights, they need different types of bridges, right? So we said that there's different types of proofs as well. We went through the simplest type of proof for God's existence, right? This idea of the argument or proof by design, which in fancy terms is called the teleological argument. That we see that there's purpose, there's organization, there's nazm in the world, and we had these two premises, right? That we see out in the world, in the universe, in the cosmos, that there's order, that there's design, meaning we see cause and effect. Then we said, okay, whenever we see cause and effect, we see something that has order and plan and design, we know based on experience that somebody was there to make it happen. There was an orderer, a designer, a nazm. We said, therefore, our conclusion is this place, this universe, this cosmos, could not have come out of nowhere. It can't come from nothing. Something was there behind everything, right? This creator, designer, whoever it is. You don't have to use the word God right now. We know it's God. But this idea, this proof is just showing us we have, people say that believing in God is not rational, it's illogical. We said, look, here's a very rational scientific proof for you. We showed you using scientific ideas and rational proofs that there is a God. There is a creator, there's something out there. It's not just random, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. We didn't use any emotions, we didn't use our feelings, we didn't use the Quran, we didn't use the Hadith, we did nothing like that. Everything here was based on anything any person could experience. Right? Any human being experiences and understands these things. Especially atheists if they believe in science, right? So that's where we left off. Now we said, okay, that's one type of proof. Now is there anything that's even more powerful than that? Is there any sort of stronger type of proof? Now this is pretty good. This idea of argument by design works for most people. But some people nowadays, everybody, they're YouTube philosophers and armchair philosophers, and there's so many atheists out there right now poking holes in arguments. So people ask, okay, well, is there anything stronger that you have? And there's many, many stronger arguments. I want to give one simple one. Hopefully it'll only take a few minutes to explain, and then we'll see if there's any questions about that. Before we start that, are there any questions or comments from last night? About the topic at least, not random stuff. No? Okay, so let's go. So, I want to give an analogy. Okay. Let's do it like this. Okay. So what's your name? Mehdi. I'm giving this to you. Now, I want you to pass it to Jasim. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Now, Jasim, who are you going to pass it to? You pass it to him? No, pass the person next to you, yeah. Let's give it to him, yeah. Okay. Now, let's do that many. If we go around the whole time, we'll take up like 20, 30 minutes. Okay, we'll stop there. Bus, that's enough. Yeah. Okay, who has it right now? You have the marker? Okay, where'd you get the marker from? Did you always have it? No. How did you get it? You got it from? What's her name? Zachary. Okay. Okay, so now, where did you get the marker from? Yes, and where did you get it from? Mahdi, right? Mahdi, where did you get it from? Okay, where did I get it from? The creator of the marker company. Yeah, sorry. Over there, yeah. How far back can we go? So let's say, yeah, okay, so we had this marker company that designed this. They put all those pieces together. Where did those pieces come from? Where did all those materials come from? Can we keep going back all the way? Can you keep saying, you know, go back and back and back and farther and farther? Is that possible? No. Or is there going to be some starting point? Yeah. Has to be a starting point, right? Let's give another analogy. Let's say you're watching, these are really terrible analogies, right? You're watching a relay race, right? So this person is number 5 in the relay race, and they have that baton in their hand, right? You guys know what a relay race is, right? You go, you stop, you pass it to somebody, and they keep going. So we go to number 5, and we stop and say, hey, where'd you get your baton from? Where's he going to say? Oh, number 4, right? You ask number 4, where did they get it from? They're going to say, number 3, obviously. Alaykum salam. Number 3, where did they get it from? They obviously got it from number 2. Oh, this way, wrong way. Where did number 2 get it from? All right, number 1. Who did number 1 get it from? 0. There's no 0. Number 1 is the person who started the race. So they had it in their hand to begin with, right? They didn't need anybody else to pass it to them to start the race. So when you're watching the middle of the race and you see somebody with it, automatically you know they got it from somebody else, and somebody had it to start with. Somebody had it to begin with. Otherwise, a relay race is not going to happen, right? So now when you and I, when we look out in the world and we see that there's people here that have life, that they exist. Now, did any of you bring yourself to life? Did any of you bring yourself into existence? No. Obviously, we got it from somewhere else. Hasan. So if we go back all the way, there has to be something at the beginning that has this baton to start with. Nobody else gave number 1 the baton. He had it with him to begin with. So remember how people were asking this question before? Because they say, okay, let me draw a different diagram now. Right. So they say, you know, I'm over here. Yeah, that's me or that's us. And we have our parents over here. And then we have our grandparents. I'm just going to put GP. You can keep going forever and back and back and back. But anytime you ask any of them, like, hey, did you create yourself? Did you make yourself? I'm going to say, no, I got it from something else. I got it from somewhere else. Can you go back all the way? You can't go back all the way. So that means there is some starting point. And that starting point is God. It's Allah. And you know how some people say, okay, well, but who created God then? Where did God come from? The same way you said, look, in a relay race, or even me, I was the one who had the marker in the beginning. Nobody had to give it to me. I'm the one who started passing it out. In a relay race, the first person who starts, they didn't get it from somebody. They're the ones who are holding it in the beginning. Over here, the idea of life or existence is already in God's hands. He doesn't get it from anybody else. He is the one who's passing it down to everybody else. He has it to begin with. He doesn't need to get it from somebody else. So when someone asks you, well, where did God get it from? Like, well, he had it to start with. It was always his quality. It's always his nature. Another analogy, if that one doesn't make sense, if you can recite as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. So how does chai by itself, plain chai, how does it taste? How would you describe the taste of chai? Bland, right? Or bitter? Or milk? Mud? What do you say? Bug? I don't know what you're saying. Okay. It's gross normally, right? Pure black plain chai is bitter, right? It's bland, as you're saying. It's plain. Now, let's say I give you some chai, I give you a cup of chai, you drink it and it tastes sweet. Then what do you automatically know about that chai? Yeah, just that's not bad. Yeah. We don't need a mic today, everybody's just going to shout stuff out. That's perfect, that works. So we know that there was sugar in there, right? If you take that sugar out, like you have the, whatever you call those machines. What do they call them? They spin particles and stuff like that? Atom smash or something like that. So a conductor, a superconductor, something like that, right? Or collider, yeah. You spin it fast enough, you can take out whatever particles you want. So let's say we take out every single grain of sugar. What's going to happen to that same chai? The gross, bland, nasty chai that nobody wants to drink, right? Except for the really hardcore chai drinkers in here, yeah. Or shy, I should be saying shy, not chai for you guys. Well, you guys say chai too, right? Yeah, okay, I forgot. You get the chair from Farsi, so it's okay. So now, think about it that way too. So you have this cup over here, right, of chai. And now you see that, hey, this chai is sweet. And obviously you know the way that it got sweet is because somebody put some sugar inside, right? Now the question is, how did sugar get sweet? Did you have to put something else in sugar? No, how did sugar get sweetness, the quality of sweetness? It had it to begin with. Hasan, right? Sugar by itself is sweet. That's why whenever you add it to anything else, it makes it sweet. No matter what you add it to, right? Or for example, even if we don't use the chai example, I don't know if you guys are fans of chocolate milk or regular milk. We can do the same thing with anything else, right? Regular milk, obviously, is not necessarily that sweet by itself. But let's say you have chocolate milk. You know that, obviously, there's no such thing as a chocolate cow, right? I've never seen one. Have you seen it? No. So the only way you get chocolate milk is if you have chocolate, right? So somebody can ask you, well, how did chocolate get its chocolatey flavor? It's by itself. That's what chocolate is. It's chocolatey. Otherwise, you're not going to call it chocolate. And you can do that with anything. I'm scared to call on you right now, Hasan. I don't know. Yeah? You want to say something? This is going to be really good? It's going to blow our minds? It's coming from a fruit. Do you know what fruit it comes from? You know what it comes from, actually? Cocoa, cacao, yeah, it's a bean, it's a plant. It's actually really bitter, normally. But anyway, yeah. We're not going to go into the nutritional sciences. We'll do that some other night, inshallah. But yeah, so whenever you see something with a chocolatey flavor, you know that it came from that. Or, if you have food and it's bland, you add salt to make it salty and tasty. If somebody said, okay, well, where did salt get saltiness from? Well, that's a part of it. It's already there. That's what salt is. Yeah, you get salt from rocks. That's sun. So when somebody's asking, okay, well, where did God get life from? It's like, God is life. God is existence. That question doesn't make sense. The same way when you say, where did sugar get sweetness? Where did salt get saltiness? Where did water get wetness? Some things, they have a specific quality that you can't take away from it. And we're saying, when we're talking about God, we're talking about Allah. Allah's quality is existence. It's being. It's life. So nobody has to give him anything. He has it to begin with. That's his quality. And that's why he can pass it down to anybody else. So we're kind of like God's chocolatey milk, if that analogy makes sense, right? Or God's sweetness, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, something like that. The analogy makes sense? Yeah? Okay, good. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So that's pretty much the simplest form of the analogy. And this burhan that people discuss is called burhan imkan, imkan, and wujub. Wujub, sorry, yeah. Which basically, it's a fancy way of saying you have possibility or contingency. These are the fancy terms. And then necessity. So this is for all the people who actually enjoy philosophy and metaphysics. This is the fancy terms that you use basically when you see that you have a bunch of different types of beings which are all possible beings. Or call them contingent beings. Whoa, how am I writing like this? Yeah. And we ask a question like, okay, we see that these things have the quality of life or have the quality of existence. Everything, not just us, but chairs. They exist, right? This chair is actually here. This world is actually here. They actually exist. Said, okay, it didn't get it by itself. You can't have infinite of these. That's impossible. You need at least one thing which we say is necessary. It's wajib al-wujud. This is what gives everything else its existence. Right? And that thing we call Allah. So I'm not going to go into the full proof because it gets a little too technical. Yeah, Justin. Chairs are dead wood. But are you actually sitting on a chair? Or is it something imaginary? Yeah, so it's actually there, right? So we're saying it's there. It exists. It's not in your brain. It's not in your mind. You didn't think it up. You weren't daydreaming. You're actually sitting on a chair. So it didn't make itself. Yeah? Yeah, and the tree is there. So all this stuff, all these things exist, but not by themselves. So they all have the exact same source, which is Allah. This being, this wajibul wujud, which has existence by necessity. There's a longer version of the fancier proof, which I don't really want to go through because I think for most people probably is not going to make sense. Well, it would make sense. It's just going to take a lot of time. So for those who are interested in the actual formal proof, I can go through that at some other point in time. But I think because there are some younger kids here, I'm not going to bother going through all of that. Okay, 15 minutes. Let me do... Any questions or comments so far on this? There's basically one thing left that somebody mentioned, I think, yesterday that we didn't get to go through. So I'll introduce the idea right now, and then we'll finish it up tomorrow. So that way I can go to the tarbiyah discussion. So somebody might say, okay, we looked out at the universe, we saw that, okay, it didn't come from nothing. Something was there, and we're all here, no problem. But they might say, you know, we have a different answer for how it came here. So it's the Big Bang. You don't need God to do this. The Big Bang made everything happen. That's an answer that some people will give, right? They say from the Big Bang, that's where the universe is created. That's where all life comes from. So some physicists, astrophysicists, and cosmologists have tried to use this argument to say that, yeah, we don't need your God to fill in the gaps. We have the Big Bang, and that solves everything. What do you guys think? Do you think it solves it? Does it give us a problem? Yeah, Mahdi. Guy's my philosopher right over here, Hasan. So yeah, we ask any scientist, like, okay, the Big Bang, what happened before that? And which we'll go into details tomorrow. The problem is this: most people who don't study their science well enough, like, you know, let's say do it kind of like half, they think the Big Bang is the start of the universe. It's not the start of the universe. It's the first thing that they have observed after the start of the universe, at least our known universe. So those of you who have done your physics or your astronomy, you know that before all of this is something that they call, I'm not going to write the whole thing, but Planck's moment, where they say this is where time and space begins, and all these initial nuclear forces start, and forces in the universe. That's where you see the Big Bang. Before all this, they say that there's no space-time at all. And if there's no space-time, then there's no such thing as science, because you can't measure anything now. So when a scientist says, yeah, we got the Big Bang, like, no problem. You have the Big Bang, that's your theory, no problem. You can never figure out what happened before this. We can ask you the question, and you'll never provide the answer, because that's something you'll never be able to measure. In order to actually make measurements, you need space and time. That's how you measure things. That's how math and physics works. If you don't have space-time, you can't measure. So before that, you guys can't answer the question. But we, as metaphysicians or as people of religion, we have the answers for this. And we can give rational proofs for what happens before all of that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, inshallah, and how we can respond to some of these other ideas. The other thing that I want to think about, and want you to think about as well too, is when you think about the Big Bang, what comes to your mind? Explosion, right? Hasan, right? You think about this explosion in the beginning of the universe. Is that actually what happened? Alaykum salam. Was it an explosion? The name suggests it, but that's actually not true. Do you know? Ahsant. So you use the right word there. So they say it didn't explode, it expanded. That's a lot different, right? Fireworks explode. A balloon expands. Now, how does a balloon expand? Well, it has to actually be there first, right? You need to have a balloon, it has to have some space in it, and then it has the ability to expand. So that doesn't mean there was nothing there. That means there was something there that allowed it to expand. So when people say that, oh, the Big Bang, there was nothing and then the Big Bang happened. Like, number one, it wasn't some random explosion. It was an expansion of something that was already there. So your idea about this nothingness, that's not even scientifically correct either. It's actually somebody who didn't believe in the Big Bang who actually gave it this name Big Bang, not the person who discovered the idea of the Big Bang theory. But we're going to go into more of these details tomorrow night, inshallah. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. So that's all I want to do just for the Tawheed discussion tonight. I want to do a few points on tarbiyah because I think it's important for kids to some degree, but I think more so for the parents here who are raising their kids in this environment, right? Look, tarbiyah is a big discussion. There's a lot of points we need to understand in terms of Islamic parenting. I want to give just the basics so at least we have an understanding of what to do. Now the problem is the parents are not even paying attention, so I don't know why I'm bothering, but and maybe this is our first point on why tarbiyah is failing in this country, right? Inshallah, okay. So the soon-to-be parents at least will be paying attention. Okay. In our riwayat, the way that the Ahlul Bayt have described how tarbiyah is engaged is they've broken it up into 3 specific phases. The first phase, let me try it down here. Anybody know? There's 3 like age groups basically. Yeah. Asantum. Yeah. Okay. So 0 to 7, the riwayat say that your child is the Sayyid, or they're the Mawla, they're the master. They get to call the shots. The second one, there's different words, but usually they say this is where they become the abd, like a servant or more of a slave. And 14 to 21 is where they become the wazir, like your right-hand man. Yeah, wazir. Advisor, a friend. Now the problem is, as I'm sure most of you know, most of the way that you and I are raised is that our parents just think that we're a slave all the time. We don't get time to play all the time. We don't get this freedom that we need to learn. We usually don't get to call the shots. And what the ulama say is when a child is not able to express themselves and be free in this 0 to 7 phase, if you force this phase on them early on, this thing doesn't go away. It's going to come back and bite you. That's why when people hit this age over here, why is it that teenagers rebel all the time? You know why they rebel? Is because you didn't let them become the Sayyid, so they're going to try to act that out later on in life. Look at other examples from society right now too. All these celebrities, child celebrities, look at like Michael Jackson, for example, right? Michael Jackson, what kind of stuff did he do when he was older? He had an amusement park, right, in his mansion. He would hang out with kids. He would play like a little kid. Why? Because when he was a kid, they didn't let him free play. They didn't let him act like a kid. They treated him like a slave. Do this and train and practice and do vocal coaching and all of that. So when he finally got some freedom as an adult, he went back to his child age. Even when you get to somebody who's, let's say, 90, 80, whatever, however old they are, you know when you see some uncles and aunties in the community who are really, really immature and they act like a bunch of 5-year-olds? You know why that's the case? Because their whole life, their parents called the shots. They were disciplinarians. They engage in what I call like Hitler, Nazi Islam. And when you do that, you're stifling this growth. That's going to come back and haunt them. And that's why you have people nowadays in our centers who complain and cry like little children, right? Oh, I didn't like the chai today. Oh, I didn't like the food. I didn't like this. I didn't get this thing. I didn't get dessert. Why are you talking like a little child? They're talking like a child because they never got to be a child. And this is one of the biggest problems that we have in our Islamic parenting and tarbiyah. This age range is the age range meant for children to be playful, to be free. We're not supposed to force them to pray salah. That's not in the riwayat. Your kids shouldn't be with you when they're 5 years old and sit down here and don't move and don't talk. No, we're supposed to be, not we, I'm not 7 years old, but kids who are that age, they're supposed to be free. They're supposed to run around. And when they do that, they feel much more free. When you're able to do that, when they feel like they have that connection with their parents in this age, then when you finally get to the second phase, then because you made the connection, they say, all right, mommy, daddy, baba, mama, because you took care of me when I was younger, they're thinking subconsciously, then whatever you're telling me, it's going to make sense. Because you protected me and took care of me here, now, when I get to this phase, obviously I'm going to listen to what you say. Why? Because you gave me what I needed in this phase. You took care of my emotional needs, my spiritual needs, my physical needs, my intellectual needs. So basically, what ulama, I don't know what happened to green. Green is gone. What ulama call this stage also, they call this the taqlidi phase. They say over here, your kid is doing taqlid to you. That's what they're doing. Yeah, taqlidi, right? So there it's, thank you so much. So, in Western psychology or child developmental psychology, they call it observational learning. The observational phase. Meaning, monkey see, monkey do. So if a kid is seeing their parents very calm, very gentle, very open, then they're going to respond in the exact same way. If they see their parents after salah being, lively, being loving, then they're going to run to salah as well. If they see their parents in the house reciting Quran constantly, they're going to recite Quran as well. But on the other hand, if they see their parents screaming all the time, if they see their parents yelling all the time, if they see their parents fighting, if they see their parents get upset over a little bit of spilled water or something like that, then the child will learn the same thing too, that it's okay for me to get upset over little things. It's okay for me to yell at other people. It's okay for me to pick on all these tiny little issues. Because why? They're just copying their parents. That's all they're doing. If they see their parents lying, they're going to do the same thing too. So usually what happens is parents, they get upset in these phases when they see their kids with bad behavior. And I tell the parents, where do you think they learned it from? They learned that behavior from you. No, I'm not asking you, don't worry. I don't want you to give an answer for this one. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So if you look even in the riwayat, whenever Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt, whenever they would be around kids, they would stop, they would play with them. They wouldn't sit there, they wouldn't tell them ahkam, they wouldn't force them to follow rules. They would stop and play. There's even one famous story, and this is probably one of my famous ones. I mean, we know some of the famous ones where we see Imam Hasan, Imam Hussein, alayhimus salam, in the masjid playing. They're running around, they're playing. They're playing in the masjid. Not being yelled at by the elders, but they're playing while everybody's offering salah. But there's another famous story too. I think I'm going to end with this. How much time do I have left? Yeah. So one story, they say, so it was, I think, the adhan for Dhuhr came. So Rasulullah began heading to the masjid to lead salah. As he went out there, on his way there was a group of kids that were playing. So they stopped and said, Ya Rasulullah, can you come and play with us, please? He said, Na'am. So he stopped and started playing with them. Right? Usually in the riwayat, people would play with, like pretend to be animals and things like that. So that's what he was doing, right? He was acting like a child, because that's what you're supposed to do. When you see a child, play with them. So that's what he was doing. Now, it's salah time. The adhan has happened. Everybody's in the masjid waiting for Rasulullah to lead salah. Right? So all the ashab are there. They're sitting, they're not looking at their watches. They don't have watches then. But they're like, what's going on here? Like, we're waiting. Did something happen? So one of the ashab tells Bilal, they said, Bilal, go find Rasulullah. Maybe something happened to him. So Bilal goes out. He goes and then finds Rasulullah playing with all these kids. What do you think Bilal did? Put yourself in the mind of a typical angry uncle in the community. What do you think he would do when he saw Rasulullah like that? What do you think he would have done to the kids? Yeah, that's exactly what he did. Bilal came and started screaming at these kids. What's wrong with you? Blah, 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 blah. It's time for salah. How could you bother Rasulullah like this? And Rasulullah got pissed. He was angry. He said, how dare you speak to the children like this? He said, they are allowed to play and we are supposed to show them that love and affection. He said, I am not going to lead this play, because Bilal was like, but it's salah time. He said, what do you think is more important? Any of you can go lead salah too. If I'm not there, go ahead and lead it. My duty right now is to be with these kids. These kids have a haqq and a right over me. They deserve to have somebody play with them. Because if they don't, it's going to come back and bite us. So Rasulullah said, look, I'm not going to leave unless you, Bilal, get ijazah and permission from these kids to let me go. You have to get permission. Bilal asked, and these kids are already upset with Bilal now, so it didn't really work. So Rasulullah playfully said, have I been a good camel for you? They said, yes, you've been the best. I think he was pretending to be a camel with them. He's like, yeah, you've been a great camel. He's like, okay, how about, you sell me to this person for this much? Like, okay, fine, we'll sell you to him. Like, so he was still playing with them like that. And then he let him go like that. Even there, he made sure it was a game for them and played with them. But Rasulullah let Bilal, Bilal, we know he's a great sahaba, great ashab, but he let him have it. He said, this is not the way you talk to kids and treat them. Again, this is something for us to reflect on. When we see kids playing like that, are we the ones that are going to scream and yell? Or, I know you don't have kids, right? That's why you're not going to scream and yell. But we as kids, we never liked that, obviously, growing up. We don't like that. But this causes severe trauma and problems. So a lot of us now, most of us are now in the kind of obviously 21 plus phase, for those who are listening. The reason a lot of us now have spiritual trauma, physical trauma, even intellectual, emotional trauma, according to even Western psychology, is because somewhere in this phase, we didn't get what we needed in terms of our Islamic tarbiyah. Something was lacking there. And that's why you see so often now, you have individuals, even I've told you guys myself, when I was in college, pretty much right before college, I was ready to be an atheist because it didn't matter to me. Oh, may Allah bless my parents. They tried the best that they could. Again, this is not like a hate fest against parents, Nobody, I mean, how many times have parents ever been taught this kind of stuff? Where we have come from, whether it's Iraq or Iran or Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, wherever, most of the speakers and scholars, their main concern was Saqifa and Khaybar and Khandaq, like Sunni Shia polemics. And maybe it was fine for them over there. Maybe that's what mattered. But right now, what's really important is that we make sure we don't lose our kids to what's going on in society right now. Because in our other riwayat, I believe there's one from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he says, Salawat al-Muhammad wa al-Muhammad. If you do not perform the tarbiyah, if you don't train your kids, somebody else will come and do it for you. I'm not using we use a different word. I'm not going to use the word just in case people will catch on, but he used a very harsh word. He said, if you don't do it, somebody else, like the kuffar, they'll come and train your kids. And think about it right now. Those of us who, I'm a product of public school education in the US. I didn't get answers from my parents, so public school filled my head with stuff. If parents are not actively involved, especially now the way things are going with public education, the way society's teaching kids, they're going to fill their heads with things. Most of the questions I'm getting right now about God and things like that are what? About, I erased it, but Big Bang Theory, people are asking me about that. Muslims, adult Muslims are asking me about that. Evolution, doesn't that disprove God? People are asking me about that. Quantum mechanics, doesn't that disprove God? All of these things that they are learning right now in public school and then on to college and university, which right now in most places is being run by people who are atheists or people who don't care about God or religion. So they're filling our minds and our kids' minds with stuff which is غير Islami, غير dini. If we are not on top of our game, then we're going to lose them. And what the riwayah says over here is that, look, if you follow these 3 steps, then your child should be fine. But if there's any issues here, then only Wallahu a'lam, Allah will only knows what's going to happen to your child. So every parent, their job is that if they give their child this idea over here where they're, again, it's free play, let them have this freedom. Let them be open. Teach them, play with them, have fun with them, show them love and consideration. Then over here, you can start to train, right? You can start to teach. But it's not like the minute they turn 7, you turn into, again, like a police officer. No, you're still teaching and training, but with love and care. Then, even beyond that, over here, now they should be like your friend. If you've trained your children well enough, when they're in this age, you should be able to go to them for advice. Now, I ask the average parent, would you go to your 14-year-old or even 15-year-old or 21-year-old for advice? Normally, even in this range, they're still being treated like they're a slave. Do what I say because I'm telling you. So most of us, Muslimin, we're not following the advice of the Ahlul Bayt in that regard. And then again, after 21, the riwayat say, look, if you haven't done your job properly, then there's nothing else you can do. And you see what happens with, again, even myself, my parents, they tried their best. After college, most of my stuff, it was tough for me to listen to what they said after that. And I'm speaking with a lot of youth who are in that same perspective, or in that same position. And their parents come to me. And they say, my child is doing X, Y, Z. I said, okay, well, I can't fix that problem for you. What were you doing in this phase? I don't want to say too late, but at the same time, you need to repair communications with your children. I can't do that for you. I can tell your child to maybe be a bit more open-minded, maybe. But you, as the parent, need to go out of your way and try to reestablish that connection. Be apologetic. I mean, think about, I don't want you guys to say yes or no, but think about yourselves. How often, when you were a child in this phase, how often did you hear your own parent saying, I'm sorry? I probably never heard my parents saying, I'm sorry. And obviously, we know our parents are making mistakes. They're not ma'asum. They make mistakes, but a lot of times parents, they don't even apologize. And then what happens is we demand them to apologize when they make a mistake. So I'm going back to the same thing. If you don't apologize, if you don't say I'm sorry, if you're not thankful, if you're not grateful, if you're not the one saying salam to everybody, what example are they going to follow? It's only when they see us coming and being friendly, saying salam to everybody, they'll follow in our footsteps. Not if you grab them and say, go say salam to everybody. That's not going to work. They're only doing it out of fear. And that fear, I guarantee you, is not going to last very long. Because that fear will end up making them feel like they're being abused, and later on they're just going to abandon it altogether. Right? Most people. Or even if they don't abandon it, what's going to happen is they'll be like most of the other Muslimin in the time of the Ahlul Bayt, is that they were abused and pushed into this fear. So even after Ghadir, because they were so scared of the Khulafa there, they said, we can't go against anybody. Whoever's in power, whoever's telling me what to do, I'm just going to do that. It's a sad thing that Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam had to go door to door and say, you gave bay'ah in Ghadir, now what are you doing? They said, sorry, we're too scared. We can't go against these people. Because those people around them, they were thugs. And it takes somebody who has a lot of pride, right, iftikhar and fakhr in their deen to have that kind of strength. The only way that we're going to have that is if you and I have that, and we can show that to the young people in the community. So again, it's a quick summary of some of these points of tarbiyah. I don't want to do too much. One of the other things I wanted to quickly mention before we end tonight too is right now, the media that our kids are eating up is terrible. Everything on social media, TV shows, cartoons, this stuff is really bad. It's very inappropriate. Now, there's been a lot of Muslims, even Shias, who are trying to put out, let's say, Muslim-friendly magazines, books, cartoons, and things like that. Most of those who are putting that out are Sunni, which is still good. As long as it's not like super pro-Sahaba, then we're okay with it, right? But we need our own Shia stuff too, don't we? It would be really good. And now Shias are trying to get involved in that game too. So I have contacts that I know that are involved in, publication of Shia books for, let's say, teenagers or for, young kids. One of my friends also, he's somebody who studied in Qom. I wanted to show you this, guys. So he actually made a baby's first word book. It's a whole collection of books. And I brought a few copies with me as well for anybody who's interested. So it comes in this small little box. And within it, there's 5 little books. Right? So one book is about travel. One is good deeds. One is occasions or events. One is about things. And one is about clothing. So let's go. Which one should we go to? Pick a color. Blue. Okay. Blue is clothing. So again, this is meant to be for a parent to read to their young children, even newborns. So example, right? Kufi. All right, you have hijab, dishdasha. Like simple words that are not a part of our culture. I mean, it's part of it, but we don't have books that are showing these things, right? You have chador, obviously, for the Farsi or Indian Pakistani, or abaya. What else? Amama, obviously, and alhamdulillah, they got the black one in the book too. Ihram, right? What else? And Abba. I don't have my Abba now, but Sayyid left his Abba on the chair over there. So all these things, and one of these books, it has, on the occasions, it has like 10th of Muharram, 13th of Rajab. See, these kinds of things, when we start to give this culture to our children, it gives them a sense of Islamic identity in their household, right? These are the things that we need. So again, this is made by one of my friends who was a student in Qom as well. Basically, he's from Norway, so most of his books are in Norway. Basically, I've become his distributor in the US. So I have, I think, 4 or 5 copies that I brought with me. So for those who are interested, he sells these books for $20. This set of books, the whole thing is $20. Again, these are all board books. You're all welcome to come take a look. I have a few with me, so first come, first served. Anybody else who wants them, when I get back to Orlando, I can send them, but I have to charge shipping too. So if you want to save on shipping, come to me now and I can give it to you then, inshallah. So I want to end for tonight. So we talked about 2 things. We went through this. This is the tarbiyah stuff we went through. Hopefully, at least this framework makes sense to you. Any details, inshallah, we can go through maybe tomorrow night or on the other nights. Because I went through quickly, but again, we don't have a lot of time. The other point that we went through before was about another way we prove God's existence. That some things have qualities by themselves, nobody else gives them to them, right? Oil is oily, salt is salty, sugar is sweet, water is wet. Some things have a certain quality. God is pure existence and pure being. So when somebody says, what gave God existence? Said, that doesn't make sense. It's like you're asking, what gave oil oiliness? Or what gave salt saltiness? So the question about where did God come from makes no sense. Because he has that quality to begin with. And Allah is the one who gives existence and being to everything else in creation. Okay, that's it for tonight. We'll see you all tomorrow night for our final night of Qadr. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Ahl Bayt Tayyibin Tahirin.